Tonight, the inmates run the asylum as Draft Master Jay deals with Debbie. We got a 1QB half PPR redraft mock, and our star is Ryan. I hope I don't mess up his last name. I'm just going to say W. I'm mocking with the stars. Let's get it, Ryan.
You know, I've never actually had someone just say W, play it that safe. It's Weisse, but better than getting it wrong. But yeah.
Yeah. I got a tricky last name, so I get it when someone's like, hey, what's your last name? I just start spelling it because they're just like, can you spell that for me? So I just go right to the spelling.
When you first started making your mark on Twitter and with our good friends over at Fantasy and Frames, I always wanted it to be Bastille because I took like French in high school and you're Canadian, so it just like made sense. You're not French Canadian, but it could have been.
Yeah, exactly. I always like to lead with the joke sometimes, just like, hey, you know, I'm exotic, but not like someone that's got these two beautiful mixed races. I'm an Italian whose last name doesn't end in a vowel.
Well, yeah,
it's pretty exotic, man.
Thing all onto itself, exactly.
This is Mocking with the Stars. We don't have Gator J with us, the draft master. He's dealing with the Hurricane Debbie situation. We hope that he is safe. Him and his loved ones are all taken care of today. But we do have a 1QB redraft mock that Ryan and myself and all of our draft mates are going to rip through. We're going to talk about the happenings of the picks, go through each of the rounds, talk about some of our favorites and least favorite picks, and just go through some of the current situations around the NFL and how they may impact certain draft capital. We want to get it started. Let's not leave the people waiting. Vince was the one-on-one, I believe, last time we did this, and he fired it up with a hot take right away. I think picking a Bijan Robinson out of the first slot. Is that something? There he goes again. What's your take on taking Bijan there, Ryan?
So I was literally going to say, after the recent news, I don't know if that's the pick I'd be making. I adjusted my ranks. They are loving Tyler Algier down there in Atlanta again. Yeah. And there are concerns about the full workload. And in a way, I don't fault Atlanta. Obviously, fantasy managers want to see Bijan Robinson just set loose. But for an NFL organization who has two very capable running backs, that's a terrible idea. And they don't care about our fantasy teams.
Not at all.
He didn't fall far. I had Bijan as my number 2. After today's news, I did move Breece Hall ahead of him.
Okay, so you got him at 3. You got Bijan 3. Taking McCaffrey at 1. I'm guessing is that a fair guess?
Yeah. I see my internet's playing games right now, so hopefully that's not messing up too bad for you guys. But I have McCaffrey at 1, Breece Hall at 2, and Bijan at 3. And honestly, I'm an old school drafter. I would probably go running back early. That would probably be my order to start the draft as well. So.
Gotcha. And you're expecting big things for Breece Hall out of the New York Jets offense, whether or not it's Aaron Rodgers or someone else behind center. If Breece Hall is healthy for the full year, he's going to be the guy. News maybe dropped, I think it was a couple hours ago. I'm so lost on time right now. Braylon Allen was announced as the running back 2 behind Breece Hall. Is he someone you're targeting in the later rounds if you are the Breece Hall drafter?
Specifically, if I'm the Breece Hall drafter, I'm going to make that move. I don't know that the workload is going to be enough to make Braylon Allen independently valuable. Right now, there's no reason not to think they're just going to jump in there and give all of the work to Breece Hall. Also, there's the whole Aaron Rodgers doesn't trust rookies thing, and they're not going to leave Braylon Allen in there to pass protect with Aaron Rodgers in the game. That's just not something that's going to happen.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Aaron Rodgers does not like rookies. So I guess we're not expecting big things out of Malachi Corley this year, Ryan.
So there was the whole story that Malachi Corley is like bunking up with Aaron Rodgers, and that's something that like he never did when he was with the Packers. So there's that, but there's still the Allen Lazard connection there. You have Mike Williams, assuming he can get back from the knee injury, and Garrett Wilson's Garrett Wilson. So no, I'm not banking on Malachi Corley. I'll be honest. I don't even think Malachi Corley made my draft boards in best ball leagues in any of the drafts I've been doing recently. So
yeah, I think that's a fair assessment with the year one wide receiver. Just quickly recap the first round. We have finished the first round. Bijan Robinson went 101. BT Sharpeed went with Christian McCaffrey at 102. Jay Farr, Tyreek Hill at 1-3. Hey B3, Brees Hall at 1-4. HoofTube, our guy with CD Lamb at 1-5. Skeens 9 with the auto pick. Justin Jefferson at 1-6. Wilson 27. Jamar Chase 1-7. Shia LaBeouf loves fantasy football. Shia LaBeouf loves fantasy
football. Mock draft legend. Shia's in every one of these drafts.
Every one of the drafts. You went with Amon-Ra St. Brown 1-8. You went with Jahmyr Gibbs at the 1-9. Caesar C87. AJ Brown at the 1-10. Digo 5x5 went with Garrett Wilson at the 1-11. Then I tapped Jonathan Taylor at the 1-12. Again, we appreciate all the drafters who have taken part in our redraft mock today. I'll let you make your pick. Perfect. You had Gibbs, ATN. Any surprises in the first round or pretty chalky?
No, I mean, for someone who's seen as many mock drafts as me, it's very chalk. It's weird not doing super flex or tight end premium and seeing any of those players come off the board yet. But this is about what it's looking like. I think, with the Puka Nacua injury, there's always been the Garrett Wilson Puka Nacua debate. It didn't stray very far. You avoided them because you double tapped the running back position, but they went back to back to the same team. So as of now, this is precisely what I think we're seeing. I think the first big surprise for me might be Devon Achane in the second round going to Shia, just because again, the drumbeat out of Miami is that's still Raheem Mostert's backfield.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think that's the surprise pick right now.
I say it actually just popped up in the chat too. I just noticed. So.
Yeah. Like you said, it's Mostert's job. Achane's going to have those boom weeks, of course, where he's going to come out and put up those big numbers. But in redraft leagues where you don't have the ability for the platform to plug in those big play days players into your lineup like a best ball format does, it is kind of early. You kind of want that volume guy, that for sure point producer on a weekly basis. So yeah, I agree with that Achane pick there, because he was picked as the RB 8. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So a top 10 guy, and you want your top 10 guy to be producing on a weekly basis. We're almost done through the second round. I love the Gibbs ETN pick there. Does David Montgomery scare you at all with Jahmyr Gibbs, or you were projecting Jahmyr Gibbs to outperform what he did last year?
Well, before I get into that, I would be remiss and get us both in trouble if I do not get our ticker up on the screen and let everybody know that Club Fantasy has recently partnered up with TrophySmack. And if you folks are looking for anything for your league, if you use our promo, well, it's not our promo code, but our link, TrophySmack /WOFF, all of the proceeds for the month of August are going to go directly to the Women of Fantasy Football Scholarship partnership that we have with Laura Oakman and GALvanize. And they just dropped their Women of Fantasy Football line today. Check Kelly in Phoenix's tweet. She has all the details on that, but the ticker is at the bottom. I'm sure the link is in the description. Make sure you guys are doing that. The current raffles are Garrett Wilson and Jaylen Waddle autographed jerseys. If you go to womenoffantasyfootball.com, you can get involved with those. $5 get you a raffle ticket, get you an opportunity to win some cool merch and to help some people there. So, to go back to answer your question, now that I've paid a few bills, I am a David Montgomery truther. Last year, nobody was beating that drum harder than I was. But I also recognize that we saw a tremendous step back in David Montgomery's role in the passing game last year.
Yep.
And in a half PPR or PPR, I could also make the argument that even in a standard format, pass catching running backs are what you are looking for. And I think we're going to see an expansion of Jahmyr Gibbs's role. Even if Jameson Williams pops up to what we wanted him to be when he came out of the draft, that's not a high volume role for Jameson Williams to where there's a non-zero chance Jahmyr Gibbs is the second wide receiver, but I want to show respect to Sam Laporta. I think Jameson Williams is at least going to be third in targets on this team, and I think we're looking at 80s to 90 targets even for Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he's gonna take a big step forward this season.
Yeah, I love it. And you want that out of your running back. You want those pass catching running backs. And Jahmyr Gibbs, a player who could be prominent out of the backfield as well, is only compounded fantasy points. And that's what you want out of your running back one. Love the ETN stacker that you've accumulated there. Some people have been pushing them down the boards because, of course, the tanked Bigsby rumblings again this offseason have been happening. We have been seeing the highlight packages coming out of practice and camp with Tank Bigsby. But for me, Travis Etienne is going to be the guy for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I kind of like what you did there with your first and second picks, Ryan.
Yeah, that's exactly where I stand with it. Is it's Travis Etienne's job. We were salivating of what Travis Etienne could do when he got more involved in the passing game. Again, I have a type. So what Travis Etienne could do in the passing game, though, with the way this draft is falling out, I'm about to go very against my type on this next pick. But with Etienne, I just think, again, even if he does see less volume, less volume probably equals more efficiency. And I don't think we're going to see fewer touchdowns from Jacksonville or Travis Etienne. I think it's going to be good there. Shia saved me from myself. I was going to go Derrick Henry.
You're going down the Henry route?
Austin, my co-host on Mocking Like It's Hot. That's the thing is the value. If I can get him at the end of the third round, why wouldn't I do that? Austin hates when I go 3 running backs to start a draft. But again, I'm an old guy, hence the beard, and I still draft
old school.
Exactly.
No, I love it, though, because the value you can get at running back in the third, fourth rounds with these guys that have a projected heavy workload in both out of the backfield and lining up as a receiver, you can find some good value there. And I always trust myself to find value at the wide receiver in the mid to late rounds, because while other people are taking, wide receiver 2s and 3s to their respective teams, there's always those wide receiver ones on their teams, not necessarily for fantasy, that are just sitting there, and you can always find those guys at value. So for me, like you, I'm going to load up on a high value tight end, a couple solid running backs, and then fill up my wide receiver room as I go.
Yeah. I mean, you basically said it. I can find wide receivers late in the draft. There are guys who I like. There are guys I like who won't be drafted in this draft. Andre Iosivas from Cincinnati is not going to go in these 14 rounds. If I got stuck taking him with my 14th round pick, I'm not scared to start him in a first or second flex spot because I think he could do something. So I know there's value at wide receiver later in the draft. After you hit about the 7th round, I am disgusted with the running back talent. I'm like, no, thank you. Let's move on somewhere else. So if I don't have 3 to 4 of my running backs by the 6th round, I'm very upset with how my team looks. Is just the way it's been going. Most of my drafts have been best ball. I haven't done other than Scott Fishbowl or redraft draft yet, but that was also super flex. So that changes everything. So
yeah. It's best ball your preferred fantasy format?
No, just in the summer. Basically, hopefully my hope is always that I had a little bit of change left in my underdog wallet from the previous season's musings, and then I'll go in there and knock out just a bunch of $5 drafts trying to build up bankroll. I'll throw a few lottery tickets at the Millie Maker. I have no illusions that I'm good at any of this, but
come on.
I'm good at spreadsheets, so I have my own rankings in underdog. So I'm at least drafting with my heart and not like trying to play ADP games and things like that. But
I like it.
I definitely am not an expert, but I like to surround myself with smart people. Austin Amendola, Matt Record are dropping such great best ball content right now that even if I'm wrong about something, I can listen to them and figure out what I should have done on the other end. So I love seeing what they're putting out there. Again, I surround myself with smart people. You've been putting out such great college football content. I was just telling my wife this morning, I didn't know who any college football players were until a month ago when they released NCAA 25. I was always a big college football gamer. And it went away, obviously, in 2014. Now that it's back, I recognize these names you guys are posting about, and I feel like galaxy brained. I'm like, I know who these people are. I can do this again.
Yeah, the game's been terrific. Just for the college game in
it's fun.
general, just bringing those, just maybe not everyday consumers of the college game, just bringing them to the game, getting to know the players' names, and we're kind of hoping as college fantasy guys that kind of brings people to the college fantasy football game through
I think it will.
the CFB 25 game. Yeah.
My concern, I got really, really big into the fantasy community when NCAA 14 went away, when the game went away. And I was like, am I going to care less about fantasy now that I have my own little fake football team I got to run? But thankfully, that has not been the case. I'm having a ton of fun with the game, but still loving every bit of fantasy football. But no, I think you have. I did probably my first ever college fantasy league. Awesome. Well, this was probably 10, 12 years ago when it was harder to find because of the game, because I knew who these players were. And now that I know who they are again, maybe I'll start messing around with it again. So
yeah, we got to get you in one. I think we got a Mocking with the Stars college fantasy mock scheduled coming up in a couple weeks. I have to
I'll have to find out when that is, and I'll have to get you in there, man. I gotta participate because now I'm just gonna draft all the guys I've used on the game. So there's gonna be a lot of Syracuse. I don't know, and maybe you'll be able to answer this for me. A big Syracuse guy. I'm in upstate New York. Aronde Gadsden II is amazing in the game. Is he really good in real life?
Yeah, he's
awesome.
Terrific. Yeah, he's terrific in real life. He dealt with an injury last year, devastating injury, completely sunk his value for fantasy purposes, but he's still going as a top 3 tight end option.
I love it. Like I said,
this year, so
it's funny because in fantasy football, I became like this guy who's obsessed with tight ends, not to the level of Andrew Cooper, but obsessed with tight ends. And so my offense in this college football game, which is not where I thought this show was going to go, is like very tight end centric. And I love fast tight ends. So Syracuse, being a Syracuse guy, I saw how good he was. I was like, oh, this is work for me right here. So I'm loving every bit of that. We don't got to talk anymore about that, but Aronde Gadsden II. Remember the name, folks.
Remember the name. Remember the name. I love it. Let's rip through the second round here. Yeah. Let's recap a couple of these rounds here, Ryan. Saquon Barkley went at the 2-1. Puka Nacua at the 2-2. Kyron Williams 2-3, Travis Etienne, followed by Devon A-Chain, Drake London at the 2-6, Marvin Harrison Jr. at the 2-7, Deebo Samuel at the 2-8, Josh Jacobs at the 2-9, Chris Olave at the 2-1-0, followed by Devontae Adams and Nico Collins to cap out the second round. Does the Puka Nacua injury news worry you at all? And are you adjusting your rankings drastically with the knee situation with Puka, Ryan?
So I had already kind of made adjustments because the drumbeat coming out was truly that Cooper Kupp was more of the leading receiver there than what we all wanted to anoint Puka Nacua, but Cooper Kupp is still Cooper Kupp, which is obviously going to come up again when we talk about my third round pick. So there wasn't a big adjustment I'm making until we hear more, because they're also making it out like it's not that big of a deal, though they are calling him week to week. So my thing is, one thing we learned about Puka Nacua last year is this kid is a baller. If he can be on the field, he's going to be on the field. And Matthew Stafford isn't going to not throw to him. So I don't think this changes much, except maybe yards after the catch. Like that's, I guess, the biggest knock. And I'm not going to dig that deep into my rankings where I'm going to need to knock down his yardage a little bit. But I think the target volume is there. I think Puka Nacua is still a good pick. I was someone who latched onto Puka Nacua last year in rookie drafts and was taking him in the 4th and 5th round in like all of my dynasties. Yeah. Well, and then in redraft, you could get him in like the 14th, 15th, but I'm an idiot. I don't draft defense and kickers. I will add them as the season goes. Like, I stream them. No. Well, I drafted Puka Nacua and get to the week where I need to make a decision, and I cut Puka Nacua to add a defense. My best friend and worst enemy picks him up, and it's a keeper league. So now he has Puka Nacua for the rest of our lives.
Just hold him over your head.
And the thing was, I was telling everybody, I'm very vocal. I do this, obviously. And so I was telling everybody, hey, come make me a trade. I want to keep this Puka Nacua guy. And they're like, you don't want to keep Puka Nacua. I was like, no, I do. Come get somebody off me. And nobody would come take a player away from me. And so I end up cutting Puka like a complete moron. But I say all that to say the incredible growth of Puka Nakua's cost is a bit terrifying at this point.
It really is.
So
Yeah.
to go from a 14th round pick to, I mean, before this injury, he was a second round pick or a first round pick rather.
Yeah.
And he fell all the way to the second pick of the second. So the growth of Puka Nacua it's fun to watch. It's terrifying to draft.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with all of that. Wide receiver 8 in this draft. The value you're able to get him at last year was terrific, like you said, 14th, late rookie rounds. But this year it is it's quite rich, man. Yeah. And then the injury news doesn't help his value at all.
The injury news is also very fresh, so we're gonna know a lot more before we start getting into the heavier drafting in August. But then I also wonder for the more seasonal fans who jump into this thing in the last 2 weeks of August, are they going to know about this injury news? Are they going to be paying attention? No offense, I don't like to destroy the people who still use magazines, but their magazines were printed 2 months ago. They don't know about the Puka Nacua injury, and that could work out pretty poorly for them. So
yeah, so make sure you are following Club FFL.
Yeah, exactly.
Your latest news on all the precious injuries and possible trades, because we do have a possible trade.
Oh, yeah.
There's been rumblings of fake profiles, real profiles getting it wrong. It's all over the place. And that is star wide receiver Brandon Aiyuk, who could possibly be out of San Francisco and heading to New England or Pittsburgh or one of the other teams across the NFL. We don't know. He went here in the 3rd round, in the middle of the 3rd at 3-6, picked by the computer, but nonetheless, that's pretty much, I think, where he would go anyways.
Well, I was going to say we had the wonderful Hoove Tube on our Wednesday show last week, and Hoove actually prognosticated Devontae Adams for Brandon Aiyuk straight up. Ooh. And that is one of the heavy traction rumors right now. And who pointed out he'll be in Canton this weekend for the Expo, that he will be insufferable if that trade goes down while he's in the Expo. So for Hoove's hopes, I hope it does go down. And I'm also, if Hoove's in the chat, Rachaad White ahead of Aiyuk. I mean, obviously his build didn't really play into grabbing another wide receiver there, but you mentioned, that's about where you thought he would go. I didn't see where he went. I fully expected it to be Hoove, but it was an auto pick right after Hoove, so I didn't know what happened with that. I guess the real question, Chris, I'll flip back to the host chair for a little bit, is do we think a trade affects Aiyuk's value? Because Hoove says no matter where Brandon Aiyuk goes, he's a 1,300-yard receiver. But I have questions if he ends up in Pittsburgh or New England about that 1,300 ceiling, because New England might not have 1,300 passing yards this season. Sorry, Patriots fans. And in New England, I'm a big George Pickens guy. Yeah, and I'm not saying Aiyuk isn't better than Pickens, but there's also competition there on what should be a lower passing volume team. Do you see that ceiling? Is Brandon Aiyuk his own ceiling, or is the team going to affect that?
I think the team affects his output for this upcoming season, especially if he lands in Pittsburgh or New England, 2 teams that we're both projecting not to be pass heavy or pass heavy teams heading into the 2024 season. So absolutely that's going to affect what he's going to be able to put out. New England, I would like it more so over Pittsburgh because of the lack of competition there behind them. I mean, I think Pop Douglas is projected to be the wide receiver 1 for them right now. Maybe Kendrick Bourne. They got Jalen Polk there and Javon Baker. It's a lot of maybes for the New England Patriots. So if he did end up in Boston, I could see a situation where Brandon Aiyuk has the potential to reach 1,300 yards. But in Pittsburgh, I don't like it at all. We don't know, like New England, we don't know who the QB1's going to be. He has George Pickens there. Arthur Smith has a history of, sure, he's been a decent offensive coordinator, but his wide receivers haven't really been that prolific in putting up monster seasons when he was the offensive coordinator. So with all those ingredients kind of going into the mix for Brandon Aiyuk, him being traded to either one of those teams, I think you have to look at it as a hit to his production. 1,300 yards is going to be a stretch for me in Pittsburgh or New England.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is we saw Aiyuk, and one of the things I've always kind of respected and loved about Brandon Aiyuk is when Aiyuk came into the NFL, people were almost projecting him as a great kick returner type because it's something he was able to do very well in college, and they weren't sure how he was going to coexist with Deebo Samuel, who the 49ers had seemingly put a lot of money into and put a lot of dedication into. And then we all realized that the salary cap's a joke and they can put a lot of money into everywhere except for maybe Brandon Aiyuk. But yeah, it's not looking good there. So Aiyuk has grown as a wide receiver during his time in the NFL. But now we're like, is this a Mike Shanahan or a Kyle Shanahan thing? It's certainly not a, well, I guess, is it a Brock Purdy thing? Like there's a lot going on there. I don't want to disparage Brock Purdy, but you just don't know. So
yeah, there's going to be a lot of questions that are going to need to be answered, and we won't get those answers until probably first 4 weeks into the NFL season, and we can see what his role would be on either New England or Pittsburgh or wherever else he goes. Even if it's Las Vegas for Davante Adams, it's 3 situations where the passing output isn't the greatest situation for your wide receiver one. Yes, Davante Adams saw a lot of targets last year as the wide receiver one for Vegas, but again, the output, his fantasy production wasn't that great. I think he was in the high teens when it came to fantasy points per game. So it's just not something that I want to invest in. I hope he stays in San Francisco for fantasy purposes. I hope he stays in San Francisco for George Pickens fantasy purposes. But I mean, if he does go to Pittsburgh, maybe I move up Justin Fields a little bit. Maybe I move up Russell Wilson a little bit.
Yeah, I want to throw I'm going to throw Albert up on the screen here. And he said, what were AJ Brown's numbers with Arthur Smith? And that is a good point. Because AJ Brown did have some really nice numbers there. I was looking it up. 8 touchdowns, 11 touchdowns, 5 touchdowns, over 1,000 yards in his first 2 seasons. Only played 13 games in his 3rd season there, which I think might have been Arthur Smith's first year gone. So there is the projection for good numbers there, but what we didn't see was 2 wide receivers do it. And I just I can't accept that George Pickens is just going to go away again. Like George Pickens has paid his dues. It's time to be the number 1 wide receiver. And that's what I want to see.
So. Yeah. And I'm with you. And the thing with AJ Brown too, is like you said, it's only, I'm projecting it out there like it's a small number, but it's only 1,000 yards for those 2 seasons.
And it was 1,000 like on the nose, like 1,075 and 1,053. Yeah. It's not like he was like to where Coop's expectations are not Coop, Hoove's expectations are 1,300 yards. And so away that kind of kills the 1,300 yard thing, because I like Brandon Aiyuk. He ain't AJ Brown, plain and simple. So.
Yeah, and I think I read a stat somewhere where Arthur Smith's wide receiver one has never seen over 120 targets. Yeah, that makes so that's also alarming for Brandon Aiyuk if you are projecting him to be the wide receiver one for Pittsburgh. If he does end up there, 84 targets.
It's also concerning for George Pickens, for those of us that might be banking a little bit too much on George Pickens.
Exactly. Pickens, Freiermuth's the guy that's going to take it if Aiyuk goes there to Pittsburgh. So there's going to be a lot of factors in this move if it does go down. That's for sure. No?
I'm giving Hoove the side eye. Jake Ferguson and TJ Hawkinson in back-to-back rounds.
He loves
I just noticed that the auto draft. Well, I also just noticed that the auto draft did 2 quarterbacks just before that. So I guess I can't give Hoove too much of the side eye because the auto draft is doing far worse.
I would recap these rounds, but I've only recapped up to round 2, and we are now in round 9. Should we do? I can recap I'll recap round 8. Singletary went in round 8. Jaylen Warren 8-2. Zach Moss 8-3. Christian Watson 8-4. Jackson Smith in the Jigba, followed by Jerome Ford, Ladd McConkey, Jake Ferguson, who Ryan just mentioned that Hoove took at 8-8. Dak Prescott at 8-9. Brian Robinson at 8-10. Tyler Lockett at 8-11, and Brian Thomas Jr. at 8-12. Ryan, you got a favorite value pick of the draft so far within these last 4 rounds?
Let's see, just these last 4. I mean, obviously I feel like I hit a home run with Brock Bowers, but we'll talk about my team later. Rashee Rice, I think, is super interesting for Wilson 27, going a pick after Xavier Worthy. I feel like everyone got really caught up in Rashee Rice's legal problems, but the simple fact that nothing has happened with any of that yet tells me and tells people smarter than me that nothing's probably going to happen this season. And while I love what Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown bring to the Kansas City Chiefs, they're going to bring a downfield threat, and that's just going to open things up even more for Rashee Rice. I think Rashee Rice is likely to still be the number one wide receiver there. And when you look at who he's going around, Jordan Addison, who is clearly a wide receiver too in a tougher offense. Deontay Johnson was a great pick, Chris. You have the best value. Let's be clear. Deontay Johnson, wherever he goes past these 6 rounds, best value in fantasy football right now. But when you look like Keon Coleman, nothing established yet there. Ladd McConkey's already dealing with an injury. So to get guys like Deontay Johnson and then Rashee Rice, who could be well-established quality players in the 8th and 9th rounds, I think it's again why you should be waiting on a wide receiver, because then you start looking at some of the running backs. And honestly, this is about where the running back fall off happens. So I like all of these guys, but we're about to see just bad names coming off the board here very soon. So
yeah, it does get pretty ugly late. I mean, not even that late at the running back position.
I'm looking right now. There are like 4 running backs I want on my team right now. Like it's ugly.
Left on the board?
Yeah. So I'll be interested to see how they all shake out.
Gross.
And what's funny is Zeke is one of them who just went, but I don't know if you like the reports on Zeke right now are that he looks like an 80-year-old man getting up after he gets hit at training camp. That's not what you want to hear about your power back in Dallas.
Especially this early in the season. Maybe in like November, December, you want to say, okay, yeah, sure, it's warranted, but
I remember I'm certainly older than most of our audience, but I didn't get a chance to watch Jim Brown play, but I was a big Jim Brown guy growing up in Northeast Ohio. And Jim Brown used to say, you always get up slow so the defense doesn't know they hurt you. Well, that sounds all well and good until you're doing it in training camp. Like it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, exactly. So not a good look for Ezekiel Elliott in Dallas. Hopefully they don't use him as a center this year.
I'm actually upset that his last play as a Dallas Cowboy won't be at center, because that I was planning on living off that joke for a long time. So
they're spoiling it for us, Ryan. They're spoiling it for us. I think they do it on purpose though, because they don't want to tarnish. Jerry Jones doesn't want to tarnish his.
Also spoiling it for us. What the hell with all these backup quarterbacks? For someone who likes to wait on quarterback, you guys got me sweating right now.
I'm in the same boat. I'm in the same boat. There's a couple of teams with two quarterbacks. Who's got 2?
And then the auto pick is just loving quarterbacks right now.
Yeah, Stroud and Caleb Williams. Pretty good draft so far.
But no, I do want to talk a little bit about Deontay Johnson, because we were talking about the quality picks, and what a pick by you in the 7th round. And I'm waiting to see when we start to see his ADP creep up a little bit. Deontay Johnson, I cannot emphasize enough, is going in to the exact same role that he had in Pittsburgh, in Carolina. He is going to be a target hog. You're hoping for more touchdowns, which we've always done for Deontay Johnson. But Adam Thielen is like 34 years old. He is probably going to float around the 100 target mark. But when you look at the Carolina Panthers, they have no established tight end. They don't have a great pass catching running back. Xavier Legette has not popped in camp yet. So their best next wide receivers are 2 second-round guys who we've all been waiting to kind of do something, Terrace Marshall and Jonathan Mingo. I think we're going to see so much Deontay Johnson this season. I'm talking 140 target floor, and we could see him approach 150, 160 targets. And you're getting that in the 7th round around guys that I brought up before that are going to be lucky to walk out of this season with 100 targets. Like the value on Deontay Johnson is obscene right now.
Yeah, he's one of the wide receivers that I'm always going to grab in these middle rounds, because I'm always like, even if I go wide receiver with my first 2 picks, and then I back that up with the running back and the tight end, or running back, tight end, running back, he's always going to be there in 6th, 7th, 8th, 6th, back end 6th round for me. If I do either shy away from picking wide receivers early, or move away. If I start with wide receivers early and then move away from the position for the next few rounds, he'll always be there for me to scoop up in those middle rounds. And I'm like you said, he's just going to see an exorbitant amount of targets, and I'm here for it, man. I mean, he might not get the touchdowns because it seems like there's a lot of people high on the Carolina Panthers offense and what Bryce Young is going to be. But I'm not projecting the Carolina Panthers to be a prolific passing offense, but that is not stopping me from drafting Diontae Johnson because he's going to see it all.
I'm lucky enough. We're talking about him to be covering the Carolina Panthers for Football Guys on our training camp reports right now.
Oh, nice.
The reviews for Bryce Young taking to this Dave Canales offense are lovely. And one of the things that I really like to hear is he is starting to move the pocket and throw on the run, which is something that he did so well in college that we just haven't seen. We certainly didn't see it out of his first year. But I think Dave Canales is developing into this QB whisperer thing.
Yeah.
But I think what he knows how to do is he knows how to have quarterbacks do what they were good at. Baker Mayfield didn't get a chance to do what he was good at in Cleveland, certainly not in Carolina, a little bit with the Rams. But Dave Canales is like, let's do what you're good at. Let's sling this ball. We're not going to be afraid of turnovers. We're going to use these wide receivers. Well, Bryce Young is good at being accurate and moving the pocket around, and I think that's what we're going to see more of this year. And that's where a guy like Diontae Johnson is going to thrive because he's going to be able to move with him. No offense to Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen's going to run his route, and that's what Adam Thielen's going to do. Diontae Johnson's going to be that move wide receiver. And while they are looking to establish a tight end, I think Diontae Johnson, and they've already called him the go-to guy. Like I said, I think this Dave Canales offense could do special things with Carolina. You don't know how much in year one, but I think as we start to move forward, I think we're going to see much better Bryce Young than what we saw certainly his rookie season.
Yeah, I love that. I love to hear that. And
good snipe on Rashid Shaheed, by the way. I should have saw it coming. So
my boy. and like if you look at where Diontae Johnson's going in this draft, he went behind Xavier Worthy, Rome Odunze, Jaden Reed, Tank Dell, all wide receivers who aren't the projected wide receiver ones for their teams. These guys are going to see a decent amount of volume for where they're at, but what Diontae Johnson is going to see in Carolina is that much more than what these guys are going to see as the wide receiver 2 or 3 on their respective teams. So I'm always going to see the value.
I know the point of the show isn't to talk up your team, but you did it again with Christian Kirk the round before. But I do find it interesting. You bring up Jaden Reed. I had to own up to my mistakes on Jaden Reed recently. Oh, hold on a second. We may have some breaking news here. I'll get to it in just a second. But I had to own up on Jaden Reed. I don't think I've had anyone fall further in my rankings from day one of projections to day whatever today is of projections than Jaden Reed. All of the news is that Romeo Doubs is going to be the number 1 wide receiver there. Christian Watson is going to be the field stretcher. Jaden Reed's missing time right now, giving way too much time for Dontavian Wicks to get comfortable. Jaden Reed at one point, I have no shame in saying, had worked his way into my top 10 when I did my original projections. He is barely in my top 40 now. He had just plummeted because of these recent news. So where I used to love Jaden Reed, now I'm almost completely hands off. This is insane. So there's apparently a framework for a deal to both the Browns and the Patriots, and it's up to Brandon Aiyuk to make the decision on what team he wants to go to.
Oh my goodness.
I'm going to be perfectly honest. Brandon, I hope you're not trolling us here. I hope there's some truth to what you're posting there. People seem like they would be happy with the Browns as a destination. I don't know that I could be less happy with a destination. You have Amari Cooper there who deserves to be a target hog. You have David Njoku. I happen to also be covering the Browns for Football Guys, who has established an insane rapport with Deshaun Watson. And most of the reports are, while we saw the best of David Njoku with Joe Flacco last season, we were going to see some of that really good stuff with Deshaun Watson. If you throw Brandon Aiyuk into the mix, first of all, goodbye, Jerry Jeudy. Goodbye, comeback player of the year. And I'm not saying he could have ever done that, but I'm just saying goodbye, Jerry Jeudy. Goodbye, Elijah Moore. Goodbye, Cedric Tillman, a guy who I really wanted to see some things coming out of Tennessee. And now it's just this very weird offense that might throw the ball 550 times this year and has 3 receivers who have to try to like split those targets up. I don't love it. New England's more interesting because at least he would be the alpha. You just don't know what that offense is yet. So
yeah, it's the Cleveland Browns situation. I would not like at all for fantasy purposes. It would be an interesting mix on Sundays, seeing that wide receiver room, just the cast of characters that would be in there. But again, for fantasy purposes, I do not like it at all. I mean, and we touched on it a little bit earlier with the New England Patriots situation. He's going to be the wide receiver one, but what is the wide receiver one going to be?
What does that
with
mean?
Jacoby Brissett? Yeah, with Jacoby Brissett or Drake May throwing you the ball. Either way, I don't like. Give me Pittsburgh over both of those situations.
Yeah, well, yeah, because with Pittsburgh, let's go back to it. I mean, I was saying I hated it before for George Pickens, but there's also no wide receiver 2 in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, exactly.
No offense to Roman Wilson, and he's also hurt. He said Brandon's also just dropping news for us that Aiyuk apparently refused to trade to the Patriots during the draft, so that's super interesting as well. But like I said, at least there's no wide receiver 2 in Pittsburgh. Roman Wilson's already dealing with a foot injury, and honestly, Roman Wilson got used so little at Michigan. I imagine there's going to be a large, learning curve for Roman Wilson in the pro game. So it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out if there is no Brandon Aiyuk there. But yeah, like you, please Pittsburgh over these two teams. And I wonder if Cleveland's not in this sweepstakes completely to keep Pittsburgh out of this sweepstakes because I don't think Cleveland needs him. Like, no offense. Now, I will say a lot of injuries in Cleveland right now. Jerry Jeudy's working off to the side. Elijah Moore just left Friday's practice with a concussion. So there is a lot for them to deal with at this position. I haven't heard a lot about the New England wide receivers, but when would we hear about the New England wide receivers?
No, I agree with that. It's going to be an interesting couple of days to watch it all unfold. Hopefully we get some clarification on the situation by at least tomorrow so we can move on with the Brandon Aiyuk story.
Yeah, pretty interesting that he showed up to camp and this is all resulting from a hold in. Like you would normally expect some crap like this from a guy who never showed up and they just want to move him out. But is he just so toxic at camp that they're like, we got to get this guy out of here?
Get him out of here. Yeah, he showed up. He was slapping hands with Lynch and Shanahan, and everyone thought he signed his deal extension, and then we got nothing. He posts an Instagram image of him saying California, it was great, and he had the black and yellow dots on there to
I'm gonna kick it back up here and Brandon, if you have your own Twitter handle, I want to throw it out here because you're out here doing the breaking news. He does say this is from Warren Sharp. The Steelers are no longer an option, and the Commanders removed themselves, which is interesting to me because oh my God, I did not.
I wonder if that's going to be a money thing.
Well, yeah. So the Browns are talking about sending Amari Cooper to San Francisco. So I guess this doesn't change a whole lot. It's the same as the Devontae Adams trade when you really think about it. I love it
for Amari Cooper in San Francisco.
I love it for a Cooper, and I don't hate it for Aiyuk then because I do think there's 140 targets up for grabs with the Browns. And let's be clear, he's not getting 140 targets in San Francisco. I think, honestly, if it's Cooper for Adams, I love that for Aiyuk. I love that trade for both of them. So thank you, Brandon, for talking me off the ledge.
I appreciate that.
Brandon Taylor Sharpied all over the show right now. So,
and he's in the draft with us. He's drafted from the 2 spot.
There you go. I didn't even notice that.
McCaffrey, Adams, Laporta. Yeah, he's got Richardson there. I mean, we're all expecting Richardson to have a great year. We saw what he was able to do in the limited time that he had in Indianapolis last year. So elite Russian quarterback with the big arm. That's fantasy money right there. That's printing fantasy.
See, I am not nearly as positive on Anthony Richardson as the rest of the fantasy community.
All right.
Because I agree with every word that came out of your mouth. Every word. The upside is unlimited. It's to the moon. Yep. He finished 2 games and
he came out of every game.
Yeah, it's all well and good to be able to do those things, but I need you to do those things for more than 2 weeks for me. It's just plain and simple. And so I'll tell you right now, with his current ADP, which is usually floating somewhere between QB 6, which is insane to me, and QB 10, I will not have a single share of Anthony Richardson in fantasy football because if I'm normally, if I'm in one of these drafts where everyone's playing quarterback chicken, I'll usually be the first one to pull the trigger if I can get Allen, Hurts, not even so much Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. I do like the rushing upside. Otherwise, I'm like you, and me and you did it a little bit in this game. I know I can get Jared Goff in round 12. I know Trevor Lawrence is falling that far. A lot of times it didn't happen in this draft. Dak Prescott is falling that far. Those are the guys I'm going to take. I'm not going to gamble on Anthony Richardson. I'm not hating on the people who are. Just please make sure you draft a good backup quarterback for your fantasy team.
Yeah. And that's my guy Drew Scott. He always prefaces his Anthony Richardson pick with, make sure that if you're picking Anthony Richardson, that you maybe follow that up with a Jayden Daniels a little bit later, or a Jared Goff a little bit later, some kind of insurance just in case he does go down. You don't want to.
A Jayden Daniels, Anthony Richardson conglomerate is interesting because Jayden Daniels is being pitched as the alternative to Anthony Richardson because you can get him 50 picks later. But I think you're kind of in the right spot there. Get both of them. If that's the way you want to build your team, get both of them and cross your fingers. At least you're doubling your odds that you're going to have a quarterback every week.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm not a guy that likes to draft more than one quarterback in a one quarterback draft. But I mean, if you're taking on the risk of a player like Anthony Richardson, backing him up with another solid quarterback.
Well, in a draft like this, you almost have to consider taking a second quarterback. But first of all, how about Justin Fields over Trevor Lawrence? That's an interesting one. Justin Fields over Lawrence and Kirk Cousins.
Yeah. Well, he's been balling out in camp. There's been talk about him possibly being the QB1 for Pittsburgh, and if that's the case, he's got all the possibility of finishing as a weekly QB1. Do you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. I'm not a fool when it comes to Justin Fields. Justin Fields was Anthony Richardson before Anthony Richardson was Anthony Richardson. Justin Fields 2 years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, made one of the most insane runs that I think only Justin Fields could have ever pulled off. And that was where I was bought in because you can just get something out of Fields that you can't get from anybody else. I would need to know he's the starter is my thing. Like in a one quarterback redraft league, I will not spend a single draft pick on Justin Fields. Even if I end up with Anthony Richardson, I guess I'll draft Kirk Cousins with the last pick of the draft and have my backup at that point. But no, I do agree wholeheartedly. Just like with Richardson, Fields can do it. You just want to see some sort of consistency. What I will say is, Fields in an Arthur Smith offense could be really, really fun for fantasy football.
Agreed. And that Justin Fields drafter did pick Josh Allen in the third.
Oh, so. Yeah. Like I said, definitely not hating at all on the pick because nobody's drafting Justin Fields as their one.
No, not yet, at least. Maybe in a week or two when he's announced as the QB1, you might consider taking Justin Fields then. But now you can get him at a value.
I got to get Tresner up on the screen here because I'm giving Tresner a hard time. And he says, keep laughing now and feel dumb later. I will fully own it if I'm wrong on Fields. And I will say, like Chris brought up, the drumbeat right now is Fields because Russell Wilson isn't playing. And the old cliche, the best ability is availability. And if Fields is the guy who can play for them, it's going to work out real well. So.
Yeah, you got it. I'm looking forward to that. There's a couple camp battles that I'm looking forward to, and that's a prominent one for me because of the repercussions that decision will have amongst the fantasy landscape for the Pittsburgh quarterback. That's the draft, Ryan. 14 rounds, 1 QB, redraft mock. How do you think you fared? How do you like your team?
It went the way I wanted it to go. Landing Jared Goff late was a key for me. I'm very in on Jared Goff right now. I am a 9 times out of 10 QB late guy. And I love the late round quarterbacks that you're able to land. Jared Goff is going to play 14 games in a dome this season. He throws more than double the touchdowns per game in dome games as he does to outdoor games. I think Jared Goff, outside of he has a week 5 bye and a week 9 game at Green Bay. Every other week is indoors during the fantasy regular season. I'm salivating at that. So landing Goff late. Yeah, as I say, it went really well for me. Obviously, I mentioned I'm an old school drafter, so I took my 2 running backs to start. I didn't force myself to go wide receiver there. You guys just took all the running backs that I would have taken. As I mentioned, Derrick Henry would have been my pick. Cooper Kupp, I think, is super interesting because I think there's a very good chance if he can stay healthy, Cooper Kupp is 140 to 160 target guy again this season, especially with Puka Nacua already dealing with a foot injury. But as I mentioned, as I get to round 6, I want to have 4 running backs. So I'm going to take the last 2 starters that I trust. Ramondre Stevenson is going to be the bell cow. All reports are he is heads and tails ahead of Antonio Gibson right now. DeAndre Swift is going to be the starter, maybe not quite the bell cow. I don't think we're going to see that. But then the last one of my picks I really want to talk about, I think there is something to this Brock Bowers kid. I didn't watch a ton of college football, but I went back and watched the tape. And I'm going to be honest, I didn't see generational, but I don't watch enough college football to know what generational should look like. But I saw a damn good wide receiver. And I think right now with them having Michael Mayer, I think that's going to be able to slide Bowers out to the slot. And this kid, I think, is going to catch a lot of balls this season. And one of the knocks I heard when I was trying to learn about Brock Bowers is the size. But he's the exact same size as Samuel Porter, who was the #1 tight end in fantasy as a rookie last year. So I think this kid late in drafts is going to be super, super interesting for fantasy football.
Yeah, and that's what you want out of your tight end. You want your tight end to be either the first passing option would be great, but at the very least, the second passing option. And the fact that Brock Bowers, I think he played 20% of his snaps in Georgia at the actual tight end position, just goes to show you how Las Vegas is going to use Brock Bowers. They're not going to bring him in line and make him a blocker all of a sudden.
No,
they're not going to ask him to do something that he just doesn't do. They're going to utilize his assets, and his assets is being a supersized Hunter Renfrow in the slot, and I'm all for it, man.
I'm going to throw one more name out just because with the CeeDee Lamb possible holdout right now, keep an eye on Brandon Cooks in your drafts. They don't have an established wide receiver 3. Brandon Cooks has been a wide receiver 1 in the NFL. Obviously, those days are long past. But if CeeDee Lamb misses any time, Brandon Cooks is a guy who could set the world on fire. I was able to get him near the end of the 14th round, and I was sweating that he was still going to fall to me. But that one worked out. So again, what I would draw everyone's attention to, because I'm really big about learning through mock drafting, and what I would draw everyone's attention to is DeAndre Hopkins in the 10th round. Yes, he's going to miss a little time. He's going to be back within the first month of the season, but DeAndre Hopkins, Jameson Williams, if you believe in the breakout, guys I already mentioned, Ricky Pearsall now, if you believe in the trade, Gabe Davis, Darnell Mooney, Brandon Cooks, and then just take a look at Chris's team. Curtis Samuel, Jerry Jeudy, Rashichi, though Jerry Jeudy could end up being terrible if Brandon Aiyuk ends up there. But Curtis Samuel, Jerry Jeudy, Rashichi, Dontavian Wicks. This is why waiting on wide receiver is not necessarily a bad thing, because otherwise you're drafting these young running backs and hoping for the best at the end of the draft, whereas you can get established wide receivers. Darnell Mooney, it has 1,000-yard season already. And now he's playing with Kirk Cousins. Darnell Mooney could be a steal at the end of this draft. And then Ricky Pearsall was drafted to replace Brandon Aiyuk. It might happen sooner than we all thought.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of good wide receivers to be had at the back end of the drafts. You look there, there's Jacoby Myers, Cortland Sutton, DeAndre Hopkins, Jameson Williams, Josh Downs, who's being projected as the wide receiver 2 for Indianapolis.
Read a blurb today that the gap between Michael Pittman and Josh Downs might not be as big as you think it is. And while that's great for Josh Downs, that is devastating for Michael Pittman.
It absolutely is. So like we mentioned, there's a ton of value to be had at the back end of your drafts. Ryan, man, I appreciate you hopping on. I wish we could have had Draft Master Gator J here with us today, but of course the situation kept them off camera. Any final words you want to touch on with the draft here?
With the draft in general, first and foremost, I like to always thank everybody who drafted with us, everybody who participated in the show. I always tell people these shows would be really boring if you guys didn't help us out. So we appreciate each and every one of you. But I would also tell people mock draft. Don't listen to all the haters on Twitter who will tell you that mock drafting doesn't do you any good. I can guarantee you, as someone who lives and breathes mock drafts, it does you a lot of good. And then my biggest piece of advice is when you do mock draft, mock draft on the site that you're going to be drafting on at least one time. One, you can learn their interface if you've never drafted there before. But two, you need to learn how they rank their players. Are they ranking them by ADP? Are they ranking them by site rankings? That's where you're going to find value in drafts. I know Brandon Cook's ADP is insane. So the first thing I do when I jump into a draft is I go put a star next to Brandon Cooks' name so that I remember when I get into these 13th, 14th rounds to still take Brandon Cooks, because he might not even pop up on the ADP list. And so mock draft, have fun with mock drafting. Thanks to everybody who participated with us. And then I'm going to go back to something Chris said. Don't draft backup quarterbacks and don't draft backup tight ends. You don't need them. Load up on running backs. Load up on these super talented wide receivers.
And wait to pick up your kickers and defenses if you use them off of waivers, man.
100%. ESPN is the only site in fantasy football that requires you to fill your roster and draft a kicker and a defense. And I'll tell you what, if I'm in an ESPN draft that is a month before the season, the first thing I do is drop my kicker and defense and then go sign 2 other free agents. If it's a week before the season, I'll just keep the guys I drafted. But if it's a month before, I go out there, I cut them, I sign other guys. I want to wait out camp. That's all it really comes down to.
I love it. I love it. That's great strategy right there as we approach redraft season. Ryan W., where can they find you, man?
You guys can find me on Twitter at the Fantasy5, FIV, 5 is spelled out. But don't worry about following me. I share a ton of stuff, though. I will tell you that I've become more of a fantasy football retweeter than anything else, because I like to take in everybody else's content. So if you're looking for the content that makes me sound smart, you're going to find me retweeting it on Twitter, because if I'm retweeting it, I'm reading it and it's coming from great people. But I would actually just draw everybody's attention to what's at the bottom of the screen right now.
Yes, sir.
August is Women of Fantasy Football Month here at Club Fantasy. Every Wednesday from now through the end of August, our show is going to be taken over by Faith Enos, not this show, but our Wednesday show, by Faith Enos and Kelly Singh. You've probably seen both of them. They are the face of Women of Fantasy Football. They're going to have some of the best guests in this industry on there. And during those shows, we are holding a raffle where we are going to be giving away autographed merch every single week. Right now, it's an autographed Jaylen Waddle jersey and an autographed Garrett Wilson jersey. It's $5 to enter the raffle. You can enter as many times as you want. We'll get the jersey shipped out to you if you're the one who wins. All proceeds benefit our scholarship partnership with Laura Oakman's GALvanize, who promotes women in sports in general, not just fantasy sports. So all of your money is going to a great cause, and you guys have a chance to win some stuff. And if you're already going to buy from TrophySmack, why not help the damn show out? TrophySmack.com/women or WOFF, Women of Fantasy Football. So that's where I would promote. Don't worry about me. Focus on the women in your life. Be good to each other.
I love that, man. I love that. That's terrific stuff. Tough to follow that, right? But I gotta drop some of the shows that we have going on here at Club Fantasy. Monday, this show, Mocking with the Stars, 10 p.m. Tuesday, tomorrow, Masterclass, which is the best ball show at 8:30 p.m. Wednesdays, Who's Your Caddy? Wednesday morning, Who's Your Caddy? The Golf DFS show at 9 a.m. And like Ryan mentioned, no pun intended, the flagship show at 7 p.m. on Wednesday night. Thursday night, Trade Block, 8 p.m. Thursday late night, 10 p.m. Mock Girl Summer. Friday, we got Mock It Like It's Hot at 8 p.m. as well. Saturday, Summer School, another best ball show at 9 a.m. And then Sunday, Dynasty After Party, which is the Dynasty show here at Club Fantasy at 11 a.m. Big thank you to all of our drafters, all of our viewers, anyone that was in the chat, and of course, our star today, Ryan Weisse. We appreciate you taking the time to draft with us and sharing some of your insightful draft knowledge. It's really appreciated. Thank you very much. I'm Chris, and we'll see you next Monday.
Have a wonderful night, guys. Thanks.